Hello and welcome to Stories by Peter Hub. Today you will hear 3 stories in one video. Enjoy listening. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel. Story number 1. Today, we delve into a narrative that explores the fragile threads of commitment and the unexpected paths our hearts can take. It's a story about a Canadian couple, a moment of weakness, a painful realization, and the enduring power of a love that was almost lost. Let's meet Sarah and David. They lived in a cozy, tree-lined suburb of Toronto, their lives intertwined in a comfortable rhythm. Sarah, a talented graphic designer, brought vibrant creativity into their home, her studio filled with sketches and color palettes. David, a software architect, was the steady anchor, his mind always on logical solutions and building secure foundations, both in his work and in their shared life. They had built a life that, from the outside, seemed perfectly balanced. Quiet evenings, shared laughter over homemade meals, and the comforting predictability of a decade-long marriage. Authors note, "It's easy to take comfort for granted. When life becomes a smooth, predictable current, sometimes we forget the strength of the riverbed beneath us. We start looking for ripples, for a splash, for anything to break the perceived monotony, even if it means disturbing the very peace we once cherished." David, despite his outwardly calm demeanor, harbored a restless spirit that he rarely acknowledged. His work, though intellectually stimulating, often felt devoid of the spontaneous passion he saw in Sarah's artistic endeavors. He admired her vibrancy, but sometimes he felt like a muted background to her brilliant foreground. This quiet dissatisfaction, unaddressed and unspoken, began to chip away at the edges of their contentment. It started subtly, as these things often do. A late-night work session at a new client's office, which extended into drinks with colleagues. Then a few more drinks, a few more late nights. It was innocent enough, he told himself, just unwinding, networking. Sarah, busy with her own projects and trusting of David's nature, didn't question it. She believed in the solid ground of their marriage, perhaps too much to notice the subtle tremors beneath. The first tremor came in the form of a woman named Victoria. David met her at a downtown bar, a place he usually avoided, but where his new client had insisted on holding a team celebration. Victoria was everything Sarah wasn't: loud, impulsive, and overtly flirtatious. She worked in marketing, a world of bold ideas and fleeting trends, a stark contrast to David's structured engineering. Their initial conversations were harmless, fueled by alcohol and the novelty of a new face. But Victoria had a way of making him feel seen, making him feel exciting, not just steady or predictable. He found himself drawn to her energy, a stark contrast to the quiet comfort of his home. She laughed at his dry jokes, challenged his logical arguments with whimsical ideas, and made him feel a spark he hadn't realized was dimming within him. He told himself it was just a harmless flirtation, a temporary escape from the pressures of work. He rationalized it as a harmless fantasy, a way to blow off steam. But fantasies, unchecked, often bleed into reality. One evening, after a particularly stressful week at work, David found himself at the same bar, alone, hoping to run into Victoria. And she was there, just as vibrant and captivating as he remembered. The conversation flowed easily, punctuated by her infectious laughter. The drinks kept coming, and the lines he had drawn for himself began to blur. He didn't remember exactly how it happened, only that one moment they were talking, and the next he was in a taxi with her, heading to her apartment in a trendy part of the city. The guilt hit him in waves, sharp and cold, even through the haze of alcohol. But the thrill, the intoxicating pull of something new and forbidden, was stronger. He told himself it was a mistake, a one-time lapse in judgment. He would go home, forget about it, and bury it deep. But the secret, once born, began to fester. He found himself thinking about Victoria more often, about the way she made him feel. He started inventing excuses to stay late, to attend industry events he never would have considered before. Sarah, still trusting, still busy, accepted his explanations. She was the anchor, holding steady, while he, the stray sail, was beginning to drift further and further from shore. The affair became a quiet, insidious presence in his life. It wasn't about love, he knew that. It was about a fleeting sense of excitement, a desperate attempt to feel something new, something that he believed was missing from his otherwise perfect life. He saw Victoria as a mirror, reflecting a more adventurous, less predictable version of himself. He didn't realize he was losing himself in the reflection. The lies became easier to tell, the excuses more elaborate. He started to distance himself from Sarah, not overtly, but subtly. Less shared laughter, fewer spontaneous touches, more time spent in his own head, consumed by the secret. He felt a constant knot in his stomach, a dull ache of guilt that never truly went away. He was living a double life, and the weight of it was crushing him, even as he chased the fleeting high of his infidelity. He convinced himself that he was managing it, that Sarah would never know. He was careful, meticulous, like the engineer he was. He deleted messages, cleared his browser history, and made sure his stories aligned. He believed he was in control, that he could navigate these treacherous waters without capsizing his entire life. But secrets, like cracks in a foundation, always find a way to surface. The first sign that his carefully constructed double life was about to crumble came in a casual conversation with a colleague. "Saw you at that new bar downtown last week, David," the colleague said, a knowing smirk on his face. "With that marketing hotshot, Victoria. She's quite a character, isn't she?" David's blood ran cold. He forced a laugh. "Oh yeah, just a client meeting. You know how it is." But the smirk lingered, a silent accusation. The walls were closing in, and he was about to learn that the thrill he had chased had a far higher price than he ever imagined. The colleague's words were a cold shower, a splash of reality that cut through the fog of his self-deception. He spent the rest of the workday in a haze, the lines of code on his screen blurring into an indecipherable mess. The knot in his stomach tightened into a painful ball. He knew, with a certainty that chilled him to the bone, that this wasn't just a casual observation. The secret was out, or at least it was on the verge of being exposed. That evening, he didn't go to Victoria. He went home. The familiar comfort of his house felt alien, a place where he no longer belonged. Sarah greeted him with her usual warmth, a warmth he suddenly felt utterly unworthy of. He watched her move around the kitchen, humming a tune, her vibrant presence a stark contrast to the hollow emptiness he felt inside. The lies he had woven around himself felt like a suffocating shroud. He tried to act normal, but his forced smiles felt like grimaces. Sarah, perceptive as always, noticed. "Is everything okay, David?" she asked, her brow furrowed with concern. "You seem distant." He mumbled something about a tough day at work, a new project. The lie tasted like ash. He couldn't meet her gaze, couldn't bear the thought of her trusting eyes. The weight of his deception was crushing him. That night he barely slept. Every creak of the house, every rustle of the leaves outside sounded like an accusation. He replayed the conversation with his colleague, the knowing smirk, the casual mention of Victoria. He imagined Sarah finding out, the look on her face, the shattering of her trust. The thought was unbearable. The next morning, driven by a desperate need to control the narrative, he called Victoria. He needed to talk to her, to understand what was happening, to ensure she was as discreet as he had been. But the conversation didn't go as he expected. "David, what's up?" Her voice was cheerful, almost too cheerful. He stammered, trying to find the right words, to sound casual. "Just checking in. Listen, about us. We need to be careful. My colleague saw us." There was a pause, a beat of silence that felt like an eternity. Then Victoria laughed. It wasn't her usual infectious laugh. It was a brittle, almost mocking sound. "Oh, David, honey, you think you're the only one?" His blood ran cold for the second time in 2 days. "What are you talking about?" he asked, his voice barely a whisper. "Please," she scoffed, "you're not exactly exclusive, are you? I have a life, you know. You're just a distraction, a fun little detour." The words hit him like a physical blow. He felt a sickening lurch in his stomach, a dizzying sense of disorientation. He had chased excitement, novelty, and a reflection of himself he thought was missing. But he was just another fleeting moment for her, a detour. He had been so consumed by his own deception that he hadn't even considered the possibility of hers. The irony was a bitter pill to swallow. He had been so worried about Sarah finding out about Victoria that he hadn't even considered Victoria having secrets of her own. He had been so focused on the thrill of the chase, he hadn't realized he was the one being played. The call ended abruptly. He sat there, phone still pressed to his ear, the dial tone a mocking hum. The fleeting high he had chased had not only cost him his peace of mind, but it had also exposed him to a new kind of betrayal, one that stripped away any remaining shred of his ego. He wasn't the adventurous, exciting man he thought he was with Victoria. He was just a fool, a predictable engineer who had strayed from his anchor only to find himself adrift in a sea of his own making. The walls weren't just closing in, they had already collapsed, leaving him exposed and utterly alone. The call ended him with the force of a physical blow. It wasn't just about Sarah anymore, about the trust he had broken. It was about himself, about the emptiness he had tried to fill with a cheap imitation of excitement. He had been so busy chasing a fleeting thrill that he had become the very thing he sought to escape, predictable and easily discarded. The carefully constructed facade of his double life crumbled completely, leaving him exposed to the harsh light of his own foolishness. He put the phone down, his hand trembling. The silence in the house was no longer comforting. It was deafening, amplifying the chaotic thoughts in his head. He looked around the living room, at the familiar objects that now seemed to mock him with their stable presence. The comfortable couch where he and Sarah used to read, the bookshelf filled with their shared interests, the framed photos of their anniversaries and holidays. Each one was a testament to a life he had jeopardized for nothing. He walked to the window, staring out at the quiet suburban street. The lights in the houses across the way glowed warmly, symbols of the stable, predictable lives he had scorned. He saw a couple walking their dog, laughing softly. He saw a father helping his child with a bicycle. These were the moments, the quiet joys that he had traded for a hollow, fleeting thrill. The irony was a bitter, burning taste in his mouth. He knew what he had to do. The lies, the secrets, the double life, it all had to end. But how? How could he possibly face Sarah, the woman whose trust he had so carelessly shattered? How could he even begin to explain the depths of his foolishness? The thought of her pain, her disappointment, was almost unbearable. He spent the rest of the day in a state of numb despair. He didn't eat. He didn't work. He just sat, consumed by the wreckage of his own making. The excitement he had chased had led him to a deeper, more profound emptiness than he had ever known. As evening fell, Sarah came home. He heard her key in the lock. The familiar sound that once brought him comfort now filled him with dread. He braced himself, his heart pounding in his chest. This was it, the moment of truth. She walked into the living room, her eyes immediately finding him. She saw the despair etched on his face, the hollowness in his eyes. Her own expression softened, a flicker of concern replacing her usual warmth. "David?" she asked, her voice gentle. "What's wrong?" He couldn't hold it in any longer. The dam broke. The words came tumbling out, a torrent of confessions, apologies, and raw, unfiltered self-loathing. He told her everything, about Victoria, about the bar, about the lies, about the emptiness he had felt, and about Victoria's own betrayal. He didn't spare himself, painting a picture of a foolish, weak man who had thrown away everything for nothing. He watched her face as he spoke, saw the initial shock, then the slow dawning of pain, followed by a quiet, heartbreaking devastation. When he finished, the silence in the room was absolute. Sarah stood motionless, her eyes fixed on him, tears slowly streaming down her face. He waited for the explosion, for the anger, for the accusations. He deserved it. He braced himself for the inevitable end of their marriage. But the explosion never came. Instead, Sarah slowly walked towards him. He flinched, expecting a slap, a push, anything but what happened next. She reached out, not to strike him, but to touch his face, her fingers tracing the lines of his despair. Her touch was soft, almost hesitant, but it was real. "Why, David?" she whispered, her voice broken but without anger. "Why would you do this to us?" He had no answer, only the raw, ugly truth. "I don't know, Sarah," he choked out, tears finally blurring his vision. "I was lost. I was a fool. I thought I was missing something, but I was just running away from everything that truly mattered." She looked at him, her eyes filled with a pain that mirrored his own, but also with a weary understanding. "It's going to be a long road, David," she said, her voice barely audible. "A very long and painful road. I don't know if I can forgive you. I don't know if we can ever go back to what we were." He nodded, his head bowed. "I know," he said. "I don't expect you to. I had to tell you. I had to be honest. I'm so sorry, Sarah. I'm so incredibly sorry." She took her hand from his face and wrapped her arms around him, a fragile embrace that surprised him with its tenderness. He stiffened at first, then, slowly, tentatively, he wrapped his arms around her, burying his face in her shoulder. He felt her tears on his skin, and for the first time in months, he felt something real, something honest, something that wasn't a lie. It was pain, yes, but it was also a glimmer of hope, a tiny, fragile spark in the overwhelming darkness. The walls had collapsed, but in their place, a new, uncertain foundation was beginning to form, built not on lies, but on the raw, painful truth. The days that followed were a blur of raw emotion and tentative steps. The house, once a sanctuary, felt like a battlefield where silence was the most potent weapon. Sarah moved through their home like a ghost, her vibrant energy replaced by a profound sadness. David, stripped bare of his defenses, felt every glance, every unspoken word as a fresh wound. He tried to help, to offer comfort, but his gestures felt clumsy, inadequate. The chasm between them was wider than ever, filled with the debris of his deceit. They started therapy, a suggestion from Sarah's sister, who had somehow learned of the crisis. David resisted at first, his engineer's mind preferring concrete solutions to the messy landscape of emotions. But Sarah insisted, her voice quiet but firm. "If we're going to fix this, David, we need a map, and we need someone to help us read it." The first few sessions were agonizing. David, accustomed to logical arguments and clear objectives, struggled to articulate the swirling chaos within him. Sarah, on the other hand, poured out her pain, her anger, her confusion, in a torrent of words that left David feeling exposed and ashamed. He learned about the subtle ways his distance had affected her, the quiet anxieties she had harbored, the feeling of being taken for granted. He saw how his predictability had, in her eyes, evolved into a lack of engagement, a silent neglect that had left her vulnerable. The therapist, a kind and insightful woman named Dr. Evans, guided them through the wreckage. She didn't take sides, but she held them both accountable. She challenged David to confront his own insecurities, to understand why he had sought validation outside their marriage. She encouraged Sarah to express her anger, but also to explore her own needs and fears. It was a slow, painful process of excavation, digging through layers of hurt and resentment to find the fragile core of what remained. One session, Sarah broke down, sobbing uncontrollably. "I just don't understand," she cried, her voice raw. "I gave you everything. I trusted you completely. How could you just throw it all away?" David, for the first time, didn't try to defend himself. He didn't offer excuses. He just sat there, listening, letting her pain wash over him. When she finally quieted, he spoke, his voice hoarse with emotion. "Because I was a coward, Sarah. I was afraid. Afraid of not being enough, of not being exciting enough for you. I was so focused on what I thought I was missing that I couldn't see what I already had." It wasn't an excuse, but an honest, painful truth. Sarah looked at him, and for the first time, she saw not just the man who had betrayed her, but the man who was truly broken, truly remorseful. The anger, though still present, was tempered by a flicker of understanding. Outside of therapy, their interactions were still strained. They ate dinner in silence, watched TV without touching. But there were small, almost imperceptible shifts. David started leaving her little notes on her desk, simple messages like, "Thinking of you," or "Hope your day is good." He started bringing her coffee in the mornings, just the way she liked it. He made an effort to listen, truly listen when she talked about her day, about her projects, about her feelings. He was learning to be present, to be the anchor she needed, not just the one she had taken for granted. Sarah, in turn, began to respond. She would leave him a fresh-baked muffin in the morning, or a new book she thought he might enjoy. She started to share small moments of laughter, tentative smiles that slowly, gradually began to bridge the gap. They were learning to communicate again, not just with words, but with small, quiet acts of kindness and presence. One evening, after a particularly difficult therapy session, they were sitting in the living room. The silence was heavy with unspoken emotions. Sarah finally broke it, her voice soft. "I went through your old emails, David," she said, her gaze fixed on her hands. "The ones from your brother, about Ethan and the cabin." David stiffened, his heart pounding. He had forgotten about those. He had kept that part of his life separate, a private project, a quiet escape. He braced himself for another wave of accusations, another reminder of his secrecy. But Sarah continued, her voice still gentle. "You never told me about it, about how much it meant to you, about how you were helping them." She looked up at him, her eyes filled with a new kind of understanding. "You were building something real, David, something meaningful, and I was so caught up in my own world I didn't even see it." He looked at her, truly saw her, for the first time in a long time. She wasn't just angry, she was trying to understand him, to see beyond his betrayal to the man he was, and the man he was trying to become. He reached out, slowly, tentatively, and took her hand. This time there was no flinching, no hesitation. She squeezed his hand, a silent promise. "I want to see it," she said, her voice a whisper. "The cabin. I want to see what you built." And in that moment, David knew, with a certainty that settled deep in his soul, that this wasn't just about forgiveness anymore. It was about rebuilding, not just their marriage, but their entire understanding of each other. It was about finding the anchor in himself and recognizing the anchor in her, a strength that had always been there, even when he had strayed. The road ahead was still long, But for the first time, he felt a genuine, profound hope. They were not just a couple anymore. They were two souls, hand in hand, ready to navigate the uncharted waters of their shared future, together. The visit to the cabin became a turning point. It was a crisp autumn weekend when they finally made the drive. The air was cool and clean, carrying the scent of pine and damp earth. As they approached the clearing, Sarah gasped. The cabin stood proudly amidst the trees, a testament to John's quiet strength and dedication. It was more than just a structure. It was a physical manifestation of his healing, a sanctuary built with his own hands. Inside, the cabin was even more impressive. The mantelpiece she had suggested was a focal point, a warm, inviting space that spoke of home and shared memories. David pointed out the details, the precision of the joints, the smooth finish of the wood. He spoke not with pride, but with a quiet satisfaction, a sense of purpose that had been missing from his life. Sarah saw the depth of his character, the steady, reliable man she had married, now tempered by humility and self-awareness. Ethan and his father joined them for lunch, bringing with them a vibrant energy that filled the small cabin. Sarah watched David interact with Ethan, a genuine warmth in his eyes as he taught the boy how to whittle a small wooden bird. She saw a side of him she hadn't fully appreciated before. His patience, his kindness, his quiet joy in simple things. It was a stark contrast to the fleeting, superficial excitement he had sought with Victoria. This story, The Anchor and the Stray Sail, delves into the profound impact of betrayal and the arduous, yet ultimately rewarding, journey of reconciliation. David's initial pursuit of fleeting excitement outside his marriage highlights a common human tendency to seek external validation when internal contentment wanes. However, the narrative emphasizes that true fulfillment isn't found in superficial thrills, but in the deep, steady connection that defines genuine love. The story's core moral lies in the idea that forgiveness is not an act of forgetting, but an active process of rebuilding. Sarah's willingness to understand David's vulnerabilities, even in the face of immense pain, and David's commitment to honest self-reflection and consistent effort are crucial. The cabin, initially David's escape and project of self-healing, transforms into a symbol of their shared future, built on a new foundation of transparency and earned trust. Ultimately, The Anchor and the Stray Sail is a testament to the resilience of true love and the power of a second chance, not as a return to the past, but as a courageous step towards a stronger, more authentic future. It reminds us that even when trust is shattered, with genuine effort, honesty, and a shared commitment to rebuilding, love can not only endure, but emerge stronger. What do you think? Leave your comment under the video and subscribe to the channel Stories Peter Hub. We still have many such stories. I am grateful for your support. Ready for the next story? Then let's continue. Story number 2.
The night she came back. I never thought it would be her. You hear those stories about cheating and betrayal, but you always think it won't happen to you. Until it does. To the person who knows how you take your coffee, who folds your hoodies just the way you like, who remembers your mom's birthday better than you do, that's when everything changes. Her name was Alina. We met at a bookstore, both reaching for the same book. Cliché, I know, but it felt real. She had this smile, like she was apologizing for something she hadn't even done yet. Warm, human. We dated for 2 years before moving in together. Then life settled in. Bills, routines, mismatched socks. She liked white noise at night. I liked silence. We compromised with rain sounds. It wasn't perfect, but it was ours. We laughed a lot. We fought fair. I honestly thought we were doing fine. Then came the shift. It started small. She'd get home late, saying she had to stay at the office to finish some design work. I didn't question it, not because I was naive, but because I trusted her. Trust is quiet. It doesn't scream when it's breaking. One night, I came home early. I had a stomach bug. I was lying on the couch, half asleep, when her phone buzzed on the kitchen counter. Normally I wouldn't look, but something, a gut feeling, told me to have to. The message was short. Still can't stop thinking about that night. No name. Just that. I didn't confront her then. I just stared at the wall, running through every memory like a movie I wasn't ready to watch. When she got home, she kissed me on the forehead like always, and I felt nothing. The next morning, I asked her, not angry, not crying, just quiet, "Are you seeing someone else?" She froze. I'll never forget that look. Not shock, not guilt, just tired sadness, like she'd been carrying it for weeks and finally put it down. "Yes," she said. That was it. No excuses, no stories. She didn't even say his name. She cried, but didn't beg, and that hurt more than anything. I packed a bag and left, stayed at my friend Josh's place for a few nights, tried to be angry, tried to hate her, but all I felt was empty. For weeks, we didn't speak. No texts, no calls. The silence was louder than any fight we'd ever had. Then, 6 weeks later, she showed up. No warning. Just knocked on the door like she used to when we first started dating. She looked thinner. Her eyes were tired. In her hand was a paper bag with my favorite coffee and a book I'd mentioned but never bought. She said, "I'm not here to fix it. I just need to say what I couldn't before." She sat down across from me. No makeup, no rehearsed lines. "I was lonely," she said. "Not because you failed me, because I forgot how to talk to you. And instead of facing it, I ran into something new, something safe. But it wasn't real. It was just noise." Her voice cracked. "I ended it with him the day after you left, not because I wanted you back, not yet, but because I couldn't lie to myself anymore." I didn't say anything. She continued, "I don't expect forgiveness. I just needed you to know it wasn't about love. It was fear. And I'm sorry. I'm so sorry." We sat in silence. Then I asked, "Why now?" She smiled, just a little. "Because I miss being honest, and you were the last person I was honest with." That night, she didn't stay. She left the coffee, the book, and walked away. I didn't forgive her that night, but I didn't hate her either. A week later, we met again, at that same bookstore. Talked for 2 hours, no promises, no decisions, just two people, trying to remember how to talk, how to listen, how to be near each other again. And then, for the first time in a long while, I saw a spark in her eyes, not the old one, but a new light, a light that said, "Maybe we can try again." I smiled back. It wasn't a fairy tale with an instant happily ever after, but it was the first step towards finding our way back to each other. And sometimes that's all real love needs.
Ready for the next story? Then let's continue. Story number 3. Passion and hatred in the penthouse.
Daniel Carter stood by the massive window of their penthouse, glass of whiskey in hand, watching New York's skyline flicker as dusk settled over the city. The sounds of honking taxis and distant sirens were faint here, 50 floors above the chaos. Behind him, Olivia sat on the plush leather sofa, her legs tucked beneath her. The expensive silk dress she wore clung tightly, but her face was pale and drawn. The light from the chandeliers caught the tears she blinked away. "It feels like we're strangers," she whispered. Daniel sighed deeply. "It's just stress. The deal with Meridian Capital is hanging by a thread." "Stress or not, you haven't been yourself," she said softly. "You're shutting me out, and it's killing me." Daniel set down his glass, running a hand through his dark hair. "Olivia, you know how high the stakes are. I have to do what it takes to keep us ahead." "And what about us?" she challenged, standing up. "Where do we fit into all this? Sometimes I wonder if you even care about me anymore." He looked away, swallowing hard. "That's not true." "It feels true, Daniel. I feel invisible." The silence between them thickened. The penthouse, with all its luxury, suddenly felt like a gilded cage. Olivia paced the room, frustration and hurt battling inside her. "You never talk anymore. When was the last time we had dinner together? Or a weekend without your phone glued to your hand?" Daniel's jaw tightened. "We're building an empire. Sacrifices have to be made." "Sacrifices," she echoed bitterly. "At what cost? I'm losing you." He crossed the room, reaching for her hand. She pulled away. "Please, Olivia, don't do this." She shook her head, eyes blazing. "Maybe this is the end." Olivia grabbed her coat, her heart pounding. "I need air. I'm going for a walk." Daniel said nothing as she slipped out into the chilly New York night. The city was alive, but Olivia felt hollow. Her thoughts spiraled. Doubts, regrets, fears. She wandered aimlessly, eventually ending up in a small park. The lights of the city felt distant here. Back in the office the next morning, Daniel was met by two men he barely knew. "We need to discuss your company's finances," one said coldly, sliding a folder across the desk. Daniel opened it, eyes widening. Documents showed forged transactions, siphoning money into offshore accounts under his name. "This is impossible," he said. "It's real, Mr. Carter. We have copies ready for the press." Daniel's mind raced. It was sabotage, a plot from competitors to ruin him. Daniel tried calling Olivia. No answer. Texts unread. Days passed. He was forced to lay low. His phone lines were tapped, his accounts frozen. He disappeared from the public eye. Worried sick, Olivia began asking around. A friend told her Daniel was seen in a Brooklyn neighborhood, far from the penthouse's shine. Her heart in her throat, she went to find him. She climbed the creaky stairs of a dilapidated building. Inside a small, sparse apartment, Daniel sat on a threadbare couch. He looked tired, the city's fight etched into his face. "Daniel," she said, voice breaking. He looked up, eyes shining with tears. "Olivia." Olivia took Daniel to a modest apartment she owned nearby. Without the penthouse or the wealth, they had only each other. Slowly they talked about fears, betrayals, hopes. Bit by bit,
The cracks in their relationship began to mend. The modest Brooklyn apartment was a far cry from the penthouse's sweeping views and polished marble floors. The walls were thin, the heating creaked in the night, and the furniture was sparse. Yet for Daniel and Olivia, it was a sanctuary. Daniel sat at the small kitchen table, hands clasped tightly. Olivia watched him, her heart aching. "How did it come to this?" she whispered. He shook his head. "I never saw it coming. Those documents. Someone wanted me gone." Olivia reached across, squeezing his hand. "We'll fight. Together." Days turned into weeks. The business world had moved on, rumors swirling around Daniel's sudden disappearance. Competitors were quick to fill the void. But Olivia refused to give up. She started working the phones, contacting lawyers, investigators. Slowly, pieces of the sabotage emerged. Forged documents traced back to a rival firm named Hargrove & Co., a company known for ruthless tactics. Olivia and Daniel devised a plan. They couldn't afford to fight dirty, but they would fight smart. Living in such close quarters with their diminished resources forced Daniel and Olivia to confront more than just external enemies. Their old arguments resurfaced. "I can't believe you kept me in the dark about some of those business deals," Olivia said one night. Daniel clenched his jaw. "I was protecting you. You don't understand the pressure." "But I'm your partner, Daniel. I should have known everything." Their voices grew louder, echoing in the small apartment. After the storm of words, exhaustion pulled them down into a fragile silence. One morning, a call came through. A respected journalist was interested in their story. Daniel's side of the truth could finally be heard. Olivia coached him through the interview, helping him regain his voice. The article painted them as victims of corporate espionage, eliciting sympathy and support from the industry. As the public narrative shifted, Daniel and Olivia found themselves slowly rebuilding what had almost broken. They spent evenings talking, not about business, but about them, about dreams, fears, and love. Their fights didn't disappear overnight, but forgiveness grew, layer by layer. Armed with new evidence and growing support, Daniel filed a lawsuit against Hargrove & Co. The legal battle was grueling, but the couple stood united. Through sleepless nights and courtroom drama, they found strength in each other. Months later, Daniel and Olivia received the news. The court ruled in their favor. The rival firm was fined, their reputation tarnished. The tech community rallied behind Daniel's company, and offers to rebuild poured in. But Daniel and Olivia decided not to return to the penthouse immediately. They had learned the hard way that success was not just about money or status. It was about love, trust, and resilience. Together, in their modest Brooklyn apartment, they began planning their next chapter. The Brooklyn apartment felt different now. Not just a refuge from the storm, but a home where Daniel and Olivia could breathe. The chaos of their former lives had faded into a distant memory, replaced by the hum of city life through thin walls. They shared morning coffee at the cramped kitchen table, smiles more genuine than they'd had in months. Olivia looked at Daniel thoughtfully. "Maybe we needed this," she said softly. Daniel nodded. "To remember what really matters." With the court victory behind them, Olivia suggested they launch a smaller, more personal startup, one focused on ethical technology, something they both believed in deeply. Daniel was hesitant at first. Starting over won't be easy, but it will be honest, Olivia smiled. And together, they poured their savings into the new venture, using lessons learned from their fall. One evening, a knock on the door startled them. Standing there was Marcus, an old friend from the early days of their company. "I heard about what happened," Marcus said, concern etched on his face. "I want to help." His offer opened doors to new investors and contacts, but with old allies came old memories and the risk of repeating past mistakes.
As the new business grew, so did the pressures. Daniel and Olivia found themselves navigating disagreements over strategy and priorities. One late night, tensions flared. "You're pushing too hard," Olivia said. "And you're not pushing enough," Daniel shot back. The argument threatened to unravel the progress they'd made. Exhausted and frustrated, Olivia packed a bag. "I need time," she said quietly. Daniel reached out, desperate. "Don't go." But Olivia needed space to heal, from business stress and from the lingering wounds between them. Alone in the apartment, Daniel reflected on his mistakes. He realized that success wasn't worth sacrificing their relationship. He wrote Olivia a letter, pouring his heart out, promising to listen, to change. Days later, Olivia returned. They sat on the worn couch, hands intertwined. "I forgive you," she said. "I love you," Daniel whispered. Their journey was far from over, but they had found a way back. Together, they faced the challenges ahead, rebuilding their company and their marriage. The penthouse was no longer a symbol of status, but a reminder of how far they'd come. Their love, tempered by hardship, was stronger than ever. Months had passed since Olivia's return. Their fledgling startup was gaining momentum, attracting attention for its innovative approach and ethical values. Daniel and Olivia worked side by side, each bringing their unique strengths to the table. One crisp autumn evening, they sat on the rooftop of their modest building, gazing at the New York skyline. "It's not the penthouse," Olivia mused, "but I wouldn't trade this for anything." Daniel smiled. "We built something real. Together." However, peace was fragile. One afternoon, Daniel received an unexpected email, a veiled threat from a remaining Hargrove executive, warning him to back off or face consequences. Though the legal battle was over, the enemy wasn't finished. Daniel showed Olivia the message. "We're not going to let fear win," she said firmly. They tightened security, sought advice, and vowed not to let their past control their future. In a bold move, Daniel reached out to the Hargrove CEO for a private meeting. "Let's end this," Daniel proposed. "No more games. Let's focus on innovation, not destruction." The CEO was wary but intrigued. The meeting sparked a surprising dialogue. Though mistrust lingered, both sides agreed to avoid hostile takeovers and focus on fair competition. For Daniel and Olivia, it was a symbol of their growth, choosing peace over revenge. With their company stabilizing, Daniel and Olivia finally revisited their penthouse. The grandeur felt different now, less a trophy, more a chapter closed. They stood together on the balcony, hands clasped. "We're ready," Olivia said. Back in their penthouse, Daniel poured 2 glasses of champagne. "To us," he toasted. "To everything we've been through," Olivia replied. They clinked glasses, the city lights sparkling around them, a testament to resilience, forgiveness, and enduring love. In the months that followed, Daniel and Olivia continued growing their business and nurturing their relationship. They learned that wealth was fleeting, but love and trust were forever. Their story became an inspiration,
a reminder that even in the face of betrayal and hardship, forgiveness can heal and love can triumph. Thanks for listening. Which of these stories did you like the most? Leave your comment and subscribe to the channel Stories by Peter Hub. I will be very grateful.